And so it finally came to light that Harry Mason was nothing more than an unknowing pawn in Dahlia Gillespie's game to subdue and recapture her missing daughter, Alessa. But what does that mean for Cheryl, and what does that mean for us? It's anybody's guess. I mean, the real question is right now, how did we end up all the way back in Alchemia Hospital? Truth is, I don't actually think we are back in the hospital at all. At least not in the hospital that we knew from before. Instead, it kind of feels like we're on the road to nowhere.
I'm being summoned. What happened in this town? What could be making things like this? I have a feeling if I take the elevator down, I'll find it. Cheryl.
Yeah, this is nowhere. Strangely familiar, but distinctly different from what we remember. Though it still feels like we are definitely on the right trail to find Cheryl or Alessa. Problem is, following that ghost is not going to be as easy as it seems because this door is locked with the name Phaleg carved into it. So we are going to have to locate a key to try to follow that ghost. And much like every other instance of the game, we don't start off with a map, and sadly, we will never be getting one for this area. Instead, we're going to have to just start exploring and, well, see where fate leads us. In some cases, it will lead us to somewhat familiar locations of the hospital, though they are somewhat slightly changed. Instead of what was previously in this bathroom, we instead find what appears to be a faucet with a key jammed inside of it. But it's jammed so hard in there, we're not going to be able to pull it out with our bare hands. So we'll just have to keep that location in mind as we continue exploring. And yeah, as you might imagine, these will not be safe hallways. Instead, they will be repopulated with the puppet nurses that we fought so many times previously. And it does remind me that I still have not gotten much use out of the hand axe here, so I figured since we're at the final part of the game, we might as well give it a swing. And all in all, it's not a terrible weapon, but it seems kind of pointless after having gained access to the emergency hammer. I mean, it does reasonable amounts of damage. It does seem to hit multiple times with the overhead swing, but yeah, it's mostly not great against the nurses because it doesn't have that stunning factor. But yeah, you might recall from our visit previously to the nightmarish Otherworld Hospital, there were a number of rooms with just really odd objects inside of it. This time, though, what was previously an empty bird cage is now populated by a key that we can't reach. Yeah, in reality, all those strange objects actually do have a deeper meaning and purpose. It just took a while to get to that purpose. And that isn't to say that all the places in nowhere are going to be from the hospital themselves. Instead, we now find ourselves mysteriously transported to what looks to be a replica of the Green Lion antique store where we found a passageway to that altar. Outside of a few items, though, yeah, there used to be a hole here, but now it's gone. Seems to be a mostly pointless room outside of a save point. But this clock here is a bit strange. There's a hole missing in the center. And the hands of the clock, one of them is a key. Just we're going to have to figure out some way to get to that key. I feel it's going to have to do with that large missing centerpiece. So, if it's not become obvious yet, nowhere can be a little bit of a confusing place. It's full of little puzzles and multiple keys you need to find. In fact, it's a bit pixelated and hard to see, but there are strange symbols on each of these doors that have names carved into them. And they were symbols that we saw all the way back in the town center. They popped up on those sets of TVs along with Cheryl's image. And the names just aren't randomly picked. They are instead from a Renaissance-era arcane tome of witchcraft known as Arbital da Magio Verum. Strangely, the devs went really out of their way to, pull these arcane occult references. We can't really get too bogged down into those for right now because we have to deal with the non-Euclidean geometry of this place. Because it is very important to take in everything we're seeing. It's all very, very important to the story. Someone here felt singled out in school that they were getting threats and violence pointed towards them. Just like that, we're shoved right back into the hospital. This time around, instead of a key, we do find two unique items, a screwdriver and some rusted pliers. In fact, I think these rusted pliers would be perfect for getting that one key that was wedged inside that faucet. And the key that we receive is for Ophel, which was, I think, the middle door down in this nearby hallway. And as far as I've been able to tell, each one of these names, as well as being from this arcane tome of the occult and witchcraft, were also guardian spirits of different gods of Olympia. It seems we have now found our way into what was previously the second floor of the hospital. Already I can see a few new items here and there on the wall, but for right now it's just worthwhile to check and see which of these doors are actually accessible to us. And we've seemed to have stumbled into another puzzle, another unique room that was not previously in the hospital. And what we have are 4 different panels on the wall. A symbol and a number. And while initially both seem to be pretty disconnected, the symbols themselves, if you are familiar with astrology at all, are actually astrological symbols. The numbers, though, well, the numbers don't really seem connected. I mean, Cancer is not the 10th astrological symbol, so what does the 10 denote? Well, we need to figure that out because we have a 3-image puzzle here. And in the case of, I think this is Aries? What you actually have to count are the number of limbs. So for the centaur, you have 2 arms and 4 legs. So that's 6. For Taurus the bull, you just have 4 legs. And finally, for the twins Gemini, you have 4 arms and 4 legs. So that's 8. And for our troubles, to get a very large stone of time. And it seems like this would be perfect place in that missing edifice that was inside the clock back in the antique shop. Still, before we head back there, we might as well clear out this hallway and check any remaining doors and also clear out any nighttime nurses that want to be naughty. Yeah, this just goes to show the major weakness, as I mentioned before, of the axe. It does reasonable damage, but without that stunning factor, it's just sadly really not anywhere near as useful to us as that big emergency hammer. I mean, we also have still plenty of handgun bullets to tear through this place, but yeah, the hammer is just going to be a lot quicker, even though, relatively speaking, it's a lot slower of a weapon. And realistically, the only real benefit from using the axe is the additional mobility, but considering that most enemies just blindly bolt towards us and try to run into our face, it's not really that useful to be that mobile if you can just easily take them down. Now, you might recall so very long ago back in the hospital, we found a previously blank slate that is now filled with... It's difficult to call this a poem, but it is definitely a clue to solving something later on in this hallway. It mentions a Grim Reaper's list lined up from young to old, and that to open the pathway, we need to figure out that order. And we do recall that there was a Grim Reaper's list adjacent to a locked door back in the other hospital. Seemed to just be a random assortment of names, possibly some Easter egg, but in reality it's a little solution to a puzzle. We need to order these names by their age, and then take the first letter of each name to spell a word. And it's with that word that we'll be able to operate this nearby keypad, I suppose? It's more of a odd typewriter. But what we are going to inevitably end up spelling out is alert. Not sure if that has some deeper meaning, but it does allow us to at least explore what's behind this door. which, considering we were promised a feast of madness or something akin to that, it's a bit underwhelming. It does lead us, though, into the morgue that was previously located in the basement, where we find what appears to be a Star of David, or what the game calls an Amulet of Solomon. Seems to relatively go hand in hand, same relative theology. Though I'm not sure what use we're going to get out of that.
Harry,
Lisa, what's the matter with you?
I get it now. Why I'm still alive even though everyone else is dead. I'm not the only one who's still walking around. I'm the same as them. I just hadn't noticed it before.
Lisa.
Stay by me, Harry. Please. I'm so scared. Help me. Save me from them. Please. Harry?
Lisa?
Poor Lisa. Seems she succumbed to the same fate as all the other nurses, and I think almost the same fate that Sybil would have come to. Even if we had more of that mysterious red liquid, Lisa's now nowhere to be found. Replaced by this small diary on the ground that was left behind. And in it, we get a deeper knowledge of just what Lisa had been suffering through. Seems she was in charge of something that was extremely both weird and frightening. Some patient that was left alive with wounds that would never heal. And those wounds seemed to attract all sorts of horrible insects that somehow or another always managed to make their way to the patient. Even if all the vents and windows were closed, insects would just keep getting to the wounds and feeding on them. To make matters worse, Lisa started to see hallucinations. She felt sick to her stomach, but nothing would come out. She would start to see blood and pus and all sorts of horrible fluids just flowing from everything. And since she was not able to get a physical escape from the hospital, instead she tried to get another escape. That of the aforementioned drug that seemed to be circulating through the town. Though considering her state, I don't really feel a hallucinogenic would have been the best route to take. Still a particularly sad end for a very helpful character, but not something we can really stand back on. Instead, we need to just head on to the Green Lion to get that key we were looking for. I suppose to some degree it seems a bit heartless, but we need to find our daughter. we now have the key of Hoggith. I think was the big double doors at the end of the first corridor we entered. Yeah, overall, Lisa is a very sad case, and I guess there have been hints over the course of the game that something just has been overly amiss with her. I mean, she never left the hospital, and the only time we ever saw her was in this nightmarish otherworld. So it could very well be that she was just doomed from the start. Though that really doesn't help me sleep any better. Still, on to the second floor we go. Though in this case I use the term second floor very loosely, as I don't think this is the second floor we quite recall. So part of me kind of wonders if we shouldn't feel a little bit bad for taking out these puppet nurses. I mean, at some point they were just previously probably fine and normal hospital employees, and I don't feel any real satisfaction from taking them down at this point. I mean, any one of them could have been Lisa to us. Though I guess there is also the fact that at this point we are probably just putting them out of their misery as they lurch around in the darkness of this nightmare world. And we find ourselves teleported yet again to another obscure location. You could have completely missed this jewelry store back in the town center. There was no specific reason to come in here, but there is definitely a reason that you need to come in here in this nowhere world. Outside the rifle shell, as you saw, we picked up a seal of mercury, another religious symbol of sorts, mythological. In addition to that, we also find a ring of contract. I'd say it was a wedding ring, but it's a bit too large and hefty for that. Still, I suppose they did pick the jewelry store location to have a reason for the ring to be here, but it does seem a bit odd that they would pick such a out-of-the-way location to put in this, strange otherworld location. I suppose in the end it does kind of make you wonder how this location was set up, or who is controlling the setup of this location. I mean, I don't assume it was Dahlia Gillespie. It seemed that she was purposely trying to look for Alessa for some very particular reason. I mean, a part of me wants to say it's because that, maybe Dahlia doesn't have any supernatural powers, but it definitely seemed like she had some kind of arcane ability. It's just I get the impression that she wouldn't be able to make this little pocket dimension world with all these different locations interspersed with each other. But at the end of this hallway, we do find a somewhat familiar location that does kind of match up with the original hospital. And you might recall, there was this weird panel here on the wall that was screwed into the wall. And while we were never able to find a screwdriver before, we just so happen to have one on us now. we do locate another key with one noticeable caveat. It has some dangerous electricity running through it that bars us from just straight out grabbing the key. But as there was an elevator running and electricity flowing through that key, I can only assume that this nowhere hospital is running off some generator somewhere. Though that does lead into the possibility that if we do manage to turn off the generator to get that key, how are we going to get back up here without the usage of the elevator? Guess we'll have to worry about that later. For right now, just some additional handgun bullets, which are always appreciated, as well as, well, another strange item. A little portable camera. Doesn't really seem like a place where we'd have many photographic opportunities, but, well, it wasn't nailed down, so it must be of some use to us. And a strangely now unlocked door, which, even stranger still, leads us back to that opening hallway. Yeah, part of me really appreciates the non-Euclidean geometry that this place adopts. We got a small taste of it back in the Otherworld Elementary School whenever we entered that one bathroom that popped us up to the second floor, but this place takes it to a whole nother level. So we now have a shortcut back to this floor from, I guess, the first floor. And that means all that's really left up to us now is that final third floor. Part of me is a bit surprised we never get a revisit back to that mysterious fourth floor of the hospital, but I feel like we have enough supernatural elements to deal with without a phantom floor. So we see a somewhat similar altar to the one that we found back in the Green Line Antique Store, along with two very peculiarly locked doors. They have these 3 panels with 9 buttons. We can press them and darken them or lighten them up, but no real idea about what we're supposed to do with those. All we have to go on are these 2 strange paintings adjacent to the altar here. One is a light to the future, and the other one is a light illuminating the darkness. So even though both have fairly dark themes, they both have something to do with the light. It just so happens, though, that we do have something that could produce quite a bit of light that these paintings might need, and that's the flash on the camera. By doing so, 3 symbols are revealed to us. And I get the impression that those symbols are what we are going to want to match up to on these 3 panels here. Simple enough to figure out, as long as you recall that you do have that camera just sitting in your inventory. Our troubles, we find ourselves, I think this was the director's office in the hospital. I think we found a plate in here before. This time, though, instead we find some reading material. In this botany book, we find something referencing White Claudia. Seems to be a plant unique to the region that has hallucinogenic properties that were used in ancient religious ceremonies. And that definitely seems to correlate with that mysterious drug that seems to be circulating around town to all the tourists. It also seems to kind of point to the fact that there was something going on in the hospital that did have some connection to that mysterious drug trade. In addition to that, there is supposed to be another piece of reading material that's supposed to be in here. Apparently, it might only be in the PAL and Japanese regions, or it could only be when playing on particular difficulties. I can't really find something concrete on it, but it's supposed to be another piece, another news article referencing what happened to Alessa. It seems she got burnt up in some accident within their home, and that's why she was put into the hospital here with her seemingly untreatable wounds that just never seem to close. Still a bit strange that it just manages to sometimes not be there, or I've even seen some references that it's just non-existent in the US version of the game. And even less underwhelming is this other room, where we only find a birdcage key. Figure that after all that altar and puzzle solving, we would have got something a little bit more impressive, but it still allows us to continue on and unlock that birdcage. Honestly, I'm not really a big fan of key puzzles that just give you immediately another key, but I guess there is some level of oddity here with the ghost bird that was flapping around in this cage. And even better, we do finally manage to get the key that allows us to finally follow after that ghost from before. Where we meet the final new enemy of the game, with the slight form of a gray child, but just no corporal essence? Like nothing solid to it, it's just a vicious shadow. A stalker, if you will. And yeah, if you recall those cute little guys stumbling around that were just mere shadows, they grew up to be those vicious little stalkers there. Still, we do find ourselves in that mysterious sub-basement hallway from back in the hospital with even more locked named doors. But there are still plenty of doors down here we can actually still access. Here we find just a mere shadow of the cafeteria from back in the hospital, with the focal point being this large industrial refrigerator. So it has a broken chain, as well as a dagger stabbed into its metaphorical heart, let's say. And I feel like there must be a reason that somebody plunged this dagger into the fridge. I also feel like before we can take something, we have to give something. In this case, we want to go ahead and repair that chain with our ring of contract. Yeah, this sturdy-looking ring is enough to easily fix the chain. That should hopefully keep the door shut. And with that in place, we can now take out the dagger. Though you might be wondering why we would need to do that at all. And that's because that dagger was holding something very dangerous at bay. I could truthfully show it off. It's just a one-hit instant kill of tentacles popping out. Kind of like the tentacles we saw back in the hospital that we had to distract with some blood. But since a save point was so far away, I figure if anything I can probably show that off in a bonus video if anybody wants. But yeah, back in the storage room where previously we found the life-giving packet of blood. This time around we find something else that also gives life in a different way. A package of jelly beans. And it gives us the option to open them, which seems like a trap. But in reality is just, I don't know, it's a very strange way / I don't even want to call it a puzzle to hide a key. It just seems like something strange for the sake of being strange. From the little bit I could read up on Belthor, I don't think he has any connection to jelly beans or curiosity or anything like that. Just a little bit of strangeness. Speaking of strange, they also did include that room with the VCR from before. And all this time, we still have been carrying around that VHS tape, so yeah, why not give it another view?
What is it? Still has an unusually high fever. Eyes don't open. Getting a pulse, but just barely breathing. Her skin is all charred. Even when I change the bandages, the blood and pus just start oozing through. Why? What is keeping that child alive? I can't stand it any longer. I won't tell a soul. Promise. So please.
And what had previously just been a scratchy, distorted, garbled up video from before, we now see as a further plea from poor Alessa to be let out from her torturous life here at the hospital. We still have no real idea about this mysterious patient she had been left to look over. But it feels like more and more we are led to make assumptions about who that mysterious patient could be. And in this graffiti-strewn room we find the Ankh, the Egyptian symbol of immortal life. Just another strange, arcane religious symbol. Adding even more questions than answers about what the hell is going on here. There's just so much different iconography, so many different, witchcraft and occult symbology. Like, it's just going everywhere. It kind of makes you wonder if this cult wasn't just trying every possible thing to get to fruition what it wanted. But yeah, with that Bethor key, we finally found the generator. That means we can go get that key that was, trapped up to the electricity. And as I kind of made mention of before, there is the distinct possibility that you never unlock the particular door you needed to, so you'd be stuck without the elevator, but in reality, since we have managed to unlock everything we can, it's pretty easy to get back to where we need, with a tiny bit of a hiccup. Yeah, they throw in a few more stalkers here, but they are really not that much of a hassle as long as you have your flashlight on. I think if you have your flashlight off, they're pretty much invisible, but yeah, I think even on a damage level and health level, they're pretty much equal to the Grey Children. They're just a little bit harder to see. Definitely a weird addition, considering that I think they only ever appear in Nowhere, and there's maybe 4 or 5 of them all total in the game. Just a strange little addition, much like the Mumblers that we fought back in the sewer there. Like, there was only, I think, 4 of them all total in the game if you're not playing in the censored PAL and Japanese regions. Yeah, with that key, we are able to unlock the second to last door in the hallway.
Everything is going according to plan, sheltered in the womb.
But it's not done yet. Half the soul is lost. That is why the seed lies dormant.
And what soul remains captured in that husk is buried deep down in the subconscious.
Are you trying to say it won't work? That wasn't our agreement.
No, these are just stalling tactics. If we lend a hand, we will be able to get power. Never fear, the promise shall not be broken.
But the power we could draw now will be very weak. Almost nothing. Unless we get the other half of the soul.
We'll use a magical spell. Feeling this child's pain, it's sure to come.
But that will take time.
So quite a bit to take in from that little cutscene there. Alessa, somehow or another, in her burned state, managed to split her soul in 2, and all that was left behind only has a partial amount of her power. And Dahlia was, I guess, using the hospital, or the doctors of the hospital as pawns in her game as well, including Dr. Kaufman, who we now very obviously know is not working in our favor. But Dahlia also mentioned that she had cast some spell onto her daughter's withered and burnt husk to draw in the other half of that soul. And that does seem to have some relation to the fact that, mysteriously, Cheryl suddenly wanted to visit Silent Hill. The final room in this sub-basement of nightmares, though, is a little bit more subdued. It's nothing more than a young child's room, it seems. We get some impression about their interest and what they did with their free time. Though we haven't had very much luck with moths or butterflies over the course of the game. We also see a very familiar dress hanging on the wall here, and yeah, it's at this point that we are to fully assume that this is meant to be young Alessa's room. Just has a very uniquely locked up door here. Something about evoking 5 rights to unveil our fate. And some of those indentions in the door seem very familiar to some of those theological symbols that we've been collecting over the course of traveling through nowhere. Each one a talisman, I suppose, to unlock our future, to unlock our destiny. And while we've just been piecemeal getting the story at this point, collecting all those bits and bobs here and there, much like all these arcane symbols, it's not until we collect all of them and unlock this door that hopefully we finally get the full birth of the story that we've been being fed all this time. Still, this is pretty much a point of no return of sorts, so it's a good a point as ever to get in a quick save.
Come along. No. No. I don't want to. Do what Mommy tells you now. I just want you to lend me a teeny bit of your power. That's all. No. I don't want to do it. It will make everyone happy, and it's for your own good, too. Oh, but Mommy, I just want to be with you. Just two of us. Please understand. Oh, yes, I see. Maybe Mommy has been wrong. Mommy! Why didn't I see this before? There's no reason to wait. Herein lies the mother's womb, containing the power to create life. I could have done it all myself. Mommy?
It's just a quick snippet of the home life of the Gillespies. Young Alessa had some measure of power, and it seemed that Dahlia was wanting to use that to her own ends. But Alessa was not willing to go with it and just wanted to be with her mom. And Dahlia instead saw it as just, well, if you can't deal with a petulant child, there's more than one way to skin a cat.
I was shocked to realize the talisman of Metatron was being used. In spite of the lost soul returning at last. Just a little longer and all would have been for naught. It's all because of that man. We must be thankful to him. Even though Alessa has been stopped, his little girl has to go. What a pity.
Freeze! What in the devil's name? Ugh!
Dahlia.
Well. To think you'd make it this far.
Where's Cheryl? What have you done to her?
What are you talking about? You've seen her many times, restored to her former self.
I'm in no mood for jokes.
Don't you see? She's right there.
That's absurd.
You are the only one who thinks so.
Why? Why are you doing this?
It's been a long 7 years. For the 7 years since that terrible day, Alessa has been kept alive, suffering a fate worse than death. Alessa has been trapped in an endless nightmare from which she never awakens. He has been nurtured by that nightmare, waiting for the day to be born. That day has finally come. The time is nigh. Everyone will be released from pain and suffering. Our salvation is at hand. This is the day of reckoning, when all our sorrows will be washed away, when we return to the true paradise. My daughter will be the Mother of God.
Quit screwing around. Return things to how they were before.
Kaufman!
Did I ask for this? Nobody uses me. You won't get away with this.
Your role is over. We don't need you anymore. What do you think you can accomplish by coming here?
My, aren't we getting cocky? Bet you can't see this and keep your cool.
A glove it is! I thought I got rid of that!
All I had to do was plant it somewhere for you to find. You all, well, kept me busy. Ha! You're easy. And there's more where this came from.
Stop it!
Huh? What the?
That's not supposed to.
So it seems our efforts were all for naught. Our daughter Cheryl is no longer of this world. Instead, it appears she was just a splinter of Alessa's poor soul as it lay damaged and forever dying in the sub-basement of the Alchemia Hospital. It was only through that spell that the soul was able to be reconnected with Alessa herself, leading through the birth of this horrible, horrible, goat-faced, flying, titted god. And while disillusioned, Dr. Kaufman thought he would have a trump card still left in that mysterious red substance. All that it seemed to do is lead to the premature birth of the god, which it's up to only Harry now to unload as many rifle bullets into as he can to hopefully bring this horrible beast down before it manages to get out into the world and unleash that hellish nightmare that Alessa had been trapped inside of for so long. So, hopefully at this point you've been managing to accrue a bunch of rifle shells and a whole bunch of healing items, because the soul attack of the Incubus, as this boss is called, his soul attack is just a chain lightning of sorts that not only slightly homes in, but also does a mess of damage if it manages to connect with you, or stun lock you as it sometimes will. As long as you manage to keep moving and moving in circles, it can sometimes not hit you, though not 100% on avoiding it. Still, as it was born prematurely, even simple man-made bullets are enough to take it down, hopefully. Thankfully, we've been practicing enough gyromancy to remain safe by just running in circles. you have it. The canonically good plus ending to the game where, well, Harry now has what appears to be a new Cheryl. Sybil is still alright. The head of the evil cult has been taken care of and incinerated, much like she tried to do to her own daughter. Dr. Kaufman is now dead, so the illicit drug trade in Silent Hill should be all over. Everything should be right as rain. Or at least you would think so. Obviously that's not the case, as this has been a pretty long-running franchise where the cult still lingers on, and poor Heather Mason has to deal with her own mess of nonsense in Silent Hill 3. But still, overall, a very wonderfully twisting and turning story that, I can really appreciate in hindsight. Especially, having played all the other games and LP'd them, it's nice to see what the original was really like. And also, it's really fun to look at. There's just the baseline story that the game gets across, but there's also just the underlying themes that Alessa has been controlling this nightmare world all along, that all these distorted locations, all the enemies have been rooted in her own mind and have just been there to constantly torture and torment her to feed into this evil, evil god waiting inside of her. Just a lot to take in and a lot to appreciate here. Sound work, graphic-wise, just everything just amazing. So hopefully you had a fun time. Hopefully you will stick around. I'm going to do a little bit of a bonus update after this. And hopefully you will stick around next time for whatever it is I decide to LP next. See you then.